In this video, we're going to show you a lot of different footage from various cameras and profiles and how we correct the footage before we apply our suggested LUTs from Gamut. So let's go ahead and dive in. Here we have various clips from different filmmakers all across the world. We have footage from Sony a7 III, a Canon 5D Mark IV, footage from a Nikon Z6, a C100 Mark II, and also GH5 Vlog, and some other different footage as well. We're also going to go through the footage and apply different looks from Gamut and kind of showcase how the different LUTs apply and what we're looking for whenever we're applying LUTs to kind of create the mood that we want the viewer to feel. We also will be showing how we mix LUTs and kind of a way that you can kind of create your own unique look. Now, before we start grading, let's discuss 5 steps to consider when we are working with LUTs. Number 1, how do the LUTs affect skin tones? Number 2, will this LUT work better in brighter or darker environments? Number 3, what mood do I want the viewer to feel when they watch this film? Number 4, how do the skin tones contrast with colors like greens and blues, and how does it define the color palette? And number 5, how can I dial in my unique look and fine-tune the LUT to reflect the style I envision for my brand? So let's go ahead and look at this first clip right here. All right, here we have a clip from a contributor, Reagan, Lynn, Dyer, and this was shot on a Sony a7 III with a Cine 4 Gamut 3 Cine color mode. Now, whenever you shoot on Sony, we usually recommend Cine 4 with just the default settings and then Cinema for color mode. And the reason for that is with Gamut Cine 3 is you're gonna have more of a saturated look overall. Now what's good about Cine 4 is you also have a wider dynamic range where you have extra highlight levels that we can retain if things are clipping. And over here on the RGB parade, we actually have extra information that's above the 100 IRE level. Now 100 is going to be the clipping point for whites, and then 0 is going to be the clipping points for black. If you're shooting on Sony and in the Cine 4 profile, it will actually clip at about 109 IRE. So we have some extra information that we can dial back. If on the camera it looked like you were clipping clouds, we can actually retain some of that information. So in this case, we have some extra information over here that we can dial back. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to correct this footage before applying a LUT. Now I'm in Final Cut Pro X. I'm going to go ahead and go over to, I'm going to click Command 6, and that's going to bring up my color wheels because I have this set by default. If you want to add any other ones, you can do color board, color curves, or our HSL curves section. Now the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to set my exposure levels before adjusting white balance. In this case, I'm going to bring back some of my highlight information. So I'm going to pull this back until those clipping points come below 100. So let's bring that back up a little bit. And then also I'm going to bring my black levels that look like they're clipping at right about 5 IRE. We're going to bring those down to close to 0 and kind of get our max dynamic range that we can have. So the most contrast out of this clip. Also, we can see on our vector scope that this doesn't have as much saturation. If it had a lot of saturation, these colors would be pushed a lot more to the extreme. Here, I'll show you whenever I push our saturation in our master level, everything gets pushed, and you can see how far that's pushed in the vector scope. Now, I prefer to use the individual saturation levels in shadows, midtones, and highlights. So in this case, skin tones live more in the midtones range, so we're going to dial up the saturation in midtones. Probably right there. And also I like to push the saturation in shadows to kind of get some of that pop there. I don't push too much of the highlights because I like to dial that in just a little bit less than the other ones, and this is just a personal preference. So here I prefer more of the look that's going for here, and we can see the before and after. This shot has a lot more life to it now. And now, after we've corrected the footage, we're gonna go ahead and apply our LUT. Now we have over here, I'm gonna go ahead and showcase our title section. I can go to our Gamut category, which we have a custom adjustment layer that we've made available for you to download if you just visit our website. And we're just gonna drag this over the clip. Now, if we want this to affect all clips, we would just continue to stack this all over, and then anything that we put, any kind of adjustments we do in this adjustment layer will affect these clips below. Now, obviously we're working with individual clips, so we don't have to use an adjustment layer, but I wanted to show you how we can use that as well. So go ahead and select the adjustment layer. We're gonna go ahead, navigate to my color grading workspace. I'm gonna go over here to our effects window, and we're going to navigate to the color tab and then click custom LUT, and we're just going to drag this onto this adjustment layer. So once I've dragged it to the adjustment layer, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my inspector window with all my color effects, and we want to make sure that this LUT is after the color correction. Then we're going to go ahead and navigate to our different LUT categories. Now, if you've used the auto installer from Gamut, it will automatically install the LUTs here so that you don't have to browse and navigate for them. So it makes it a little bit easier, but if you want to use the manual setup, you can go ahead and download the manual installer, and you can actually browse right here and choose custom LUT and then navigate to where that LUT is. But because we've used the auto installer, we can actually view all of our LUTs from Gamut. So in this case, we're looking at this footage. We have a lot of nice neutral colors, nothing really extreme with a color pop. So I'm just going to kind of dial through a few of the different LUT packs and kind of see which ones look really good. Now, starting with Adagio, I'll probably look at maybe more Adagio 2 for a warmer look. Now, after applying this, I can see that it's a lot more of a saturated look. The skin tones pop a lot more of the reds are popping. So I'm gonna kind of dial this back down to taste. And this one you can see without anything, and then bringing it back up. This might look good closer to 0.7. So 70% level, and that is what Adagio 2 might look like. If we wanna see Dolce, let's say Dolce, maybe Dolce 4. This one is more of a desaturated look, but it has more of a cleaner white look. So the whites are a little bit more pure. And you can see that we have this laid out right here. If we want to go through Free the Bird is going to be good for a lot more of this warmer tones to it. So I want the brighter version, so I'm going to use Free the Bird 2. This one kind of takes away a little bit of the pink hue in the skin tones. So in this case, for this specific look, I might not want to use this exact LUT for this footage. If we go to Lotus, this one will look pretty great if we use Lotus 2. 2 is going to kind of have more of a stylized look that's going to take the highlights and kind of push them more to the blue range. So you can see the collar of this groom's shirt right here and a little bit of the florals. You can see it's a little bit higher on the blue spectrum. So if we take this off, you can see we have red, green, and blue. And then and they're kind of more close in proximity to where they are clipping. If we turn this on, you'll see that we'll have a lot more blues higher than the reds. So we know that we're pushing a lot more of the blue spectrum. And then it pushes a little bit more of the magenta into the black range. In this case, actually, I would probably prefer Lotus 4, which has more greens, more vibrant greens, but still allows a little bit more of that blue highlight push to kind of create that contrast between skin tones and highlights. Now, if I want to go to Stratus, this might have a nice tan look. I want to maybe use that tan and overall get kind of more of a warmer tone to it. We could also use Mango Street's Moody LUT. And this one kind of still maintains a little bit of those greens to kind of pop, while still keeping a little bit more of a desaturated look on the skin tones, but it's still nice and balanced. And maybe we could even check out more of a blue. Let's check out the blue. So you see the greens turn a little bit more blue. We get more blue in the shadows. And we still kind of keep a little bit more of a warmer skin tone there. If we navigate to Timbre, Timbre 4 might be good for this one. And this one you have, maybe I'll punch it up a little bit more, kind of have more contrast to it. I get more of a desaturated green look in the highlights. And then also I get more of an oranger, warmer look in the skin tones. Also, we have the free LUT from Gamut that is called Method. And this one, you can see once we apply it, it looks pretty good as well. This one is free to use as well. If you go ahead and sign up for our newsletter on Gamut's website, then you can actually get this LUT for free. So we can check out the before and after. Here we're not using this color wheel, so let's just delete that. And this is just the LUT on and off. I'm just disabling it. And you can see the look that we have there. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this LUT and apply it to the actual clip. So now we actually have both that we can disable. So before we had this image right here that feels a little bit more desaturated, not as much life into the skin tone, but we have good range because we shot on the Sony a7 III and Cine 4 profile. And then this one, we're just gonna add a little bit more saturation back into it and then we can apply the LUT. In this one, we applied the Method LUT. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next clip. This one is shot on, let's see, this was shot on a Sony a7 III with Cine 4. Now this was shot by KEJ Productions. This has a lot of color here. It's also more of a brighter shot. So in this case, I'm probably gonna wanna use more of a film-based LUT that we have from Adagio. So I'm gonna go ahead and navigate back to my custom LUT, drag that over onto the clip. And because this clip is already pretty close to being balanced, we're not gonna have to do too much to it. So we're just gonna go ahead and add the LUT to it right now, and then we can see how we can adjust it later. I'm gonna navigate to Adagio. In this case, probably 1 or 3 might look best. So this one, instantly all this color, this beautiful pastel look from the light greens, purples, light blues, kind of pop really well. This is at 100%, and I actually really like this look. If we wanna go to Adagio 3, we can actually pull in a little bit more of these blues. We get a little bit more of a lighter skin tone, so not as much pink being pushed into it. So before, we have Adagio 1 where we get more of the pinker hues to it, and then Adagio 3, so we have a little bit more desaturated look with the purples, but still pop with the greens and blues. This one I prefer the Adagio 1, so we're gonna just leave that. And you can see this shot right here. Looks really beautiful. I'm going to show before and after. And this one is shot Cine 4 with Cinema for color mode, so it's pretty dialed in exactly how it needs to look, right with just adding the LUT immediately. Next, we're going to go to this next shot, which was shot on, I believe, a 5D Mark IV, and this was shot with a natural profile or neutral profile. This was shot by Camera Films. This one, you can see that it's clipping right at 100, so we don't have much information above that. Obviously, we're shooting into the sun, so it makes sense to clip it. We can bring down the blacks a little bit, but we're getting a little bit of a natural flare, so I'm not gonna dial that in. This looks pretty balanced, so we're just gonna go ahead and add a LUT to it. And then we're gonna navigate this one because looking at the footage, this will probably look really good with the Free the Bird 2. This one's gonna create more of a warmer tone to it. The greens kind of push a little more to a warmer tone. It kind of pulls in a lot more of the backlit feel. So if you're shooting a lot of backlit stuff and there's not a lot of vibrant colors, Free the Bird 2 works really well in this scenario. We could also check out Lotus. Lotus 2 is going to create more of a moody feel immediately. So here you can see, just by using a different type of LUT, this one kind of pushes more of the bluer spectrum. So here you can see if the blue, green, and red were lined up, we would have a perfectly white balanced shot. In this case, this LUT actually pushes the highlights and the whites closer to blue and takes out a little bit of that red and then pushes a little bit more of the magenta into the shadows. So you can go from this shot right here, kind of dial in. If you want more of a moody vibe, you can kind of dial that into your preference. And that's Lotus 2. You could also do Lotus 4, where you're going to keep a little bit more of the colors there, but still get a little bit more of that blue spectrum. There you can see everything's evened out. Before and after. And then maybe we can even add a timbre, let's try timbre 2 on this one. So this one's kind of got a little bit of that vibe from Free the Bird. A little bit more colors there. Maybe let's do timbre 4. That's what that looks like there. Let's also check out a Dolce, let's try Dolce 2. So that one looks really good. I kind of like that one too. You're still getting a nice, less contrast. It's not really harsh on the contrast. Still getting some blues over there. And you're also getting some greens here. Now, if you were to want something with a lot more of a vibrant pop, this one with Adagio 3 is going to push the blues a lot harder. And you can see it's also pushing that, where that a little bit of fringing around the sun is happening. You have those reds and greens because we're not desaturating a lot of those highlights with that LUT. It's going to showcase those colors a lot more. And so if you want to dial that one down to taste, you can add it to like probably 0.65 might be a nice setting for that one. But I think overall, I really like the vibe of maybe Lotus 2 on this one. Or even Dolce 2, I think is one of my favorites for this look right here. Before and after. All right, let's go to the next shot. Now this shot was on a Nikon Z6, and this was by Carlson. And with this one, we're gonna go ahead and balance the shot really quick. Let's go ahead and go back over, click Command 6 to go to our color wheels. And I prefer using the color wheels more than curves and more than like a color board, just because I can kind of get the look that I'm needing only with using color wheels. And what's great is you can actually do all this as well in Premiere. So if we navigate over to Premiere, I have this same clip right here. And you can see in the color wheels, we have the same shadows, midtones, and highlights, which is great. The only thing that we do not have in Premiere that's very similar to Final Cut is we do not have saturation levels of shadows, saturation of midtones, and saturation of highlights individually broken apart. So over here, I have that extra saturation on the left side of these color wheels. Over here, we just have the actual exposure levels of shadows, midtones, and highlights. So that's one thing to think about. So we're gonna go ahead and balance this shot a little bit. We can see that we are clipping a little bit of the white, so let's bring that down just a hair. And then we're also gonna bring the black levels down a little bit closer to 0 to kind of get that full dynamic range that we're looking for. And maybe if we want a little bit more of skin tones popping, we're gonna bump up our midtones in exposure and then bring back down the shadows. So kind of bouncing back and forth between midtones and shadows for the exact levels we want. So there's before and after. Let's go ahead and slap on a LUT. Let's navigate on this one since it's kind of bright and airy. Let's stick with Adagio on this one. Maybe let's go Adagio 4. And this one has a really nice gentle skin tone palette on her face. So you can see with the LUT all the way off, and as we bring it up, we're starting to get more of a nice gentle look on skin tones. Adagio is really great with pinker skin tones and more vibrant poppy colors if that's what you're looking for. So the greens pop, the blue pops right here, and we still get a nice gentle skin tone here. So Adagio 4 is really great because it also doesn't have a lot of contrast with it. Now if I were to use, say, Adagio 1, we're gonna have a little bit more contrast and a little bit more vibrance in skin tone. But overall, I think this LUT works really well. In my preference, I would probably use Adagio 4 for this specific look. And if we wanted to see what a different one might look like, let's check out maybe Stratus. Maybe let's try a copper look to kind of get more of a warmer tone to it. It's gonna warm up the greens. It pulls down a little bit of the midtones in the skin tones. Adagio lifts up a lot more of the midtones in the skin tone range. And we can also maybe check maybe the portrait one. Let's see what that one does. This one's a little bit more desaturated, so it doesn't have a lot of pop to it. Let's try Lotus 1 maybe. Let's see what Lotus 1 looks like. So that one's gonna be very vibrant. So if we wanna use that one, we're gonna dial that back down, but we might be able to navigate. Let's see what Lotus 3 looks like. Again, that's a little bit more desaturated in the greens. Let's try to go to Lotus 4. That one evens out a little bit more. But I'm getting more of a yellow tone in the skin tones, and in this case I prefer pinker skin tones to reflect that bright and airy look here. So we're going to go back to Adagio 4 and kind of set it there at a 0.7. All right, next clip. This one is by John Bunn from Reagan Productions. Shot this in Italy, and this was on a C100 Mark II. He shot with a third-party, I believe, natural profile type look. It's nice and balanced, it's great. Here we can see that we have the bright levels are actually clipping closer to 72 to 75. So in this case, we have a lot more headroom that we can use. So we want to make sure that we balance this shot and raise these levels really quick. So go back and we're going to raise our highlights until they get closer to clipping at 100. So we still have all the information we want, and then we're gonna leave the black levels because they're already pretty close. Maybe just raise them up just a hair, and that's a great image right there. Now for this one, let's try adding another LUT. This one we can probably dial in. This one might look really good with like a Lotus to kind of create a little bit of a mood if we want to. There's some nice green, blue shades in the mountain ranges, and then we have some nice greens and yellows and skin tones. So let's try Lotus 2. So this one's going to create a different mood. It's going to make the whites contrast really well against skin tones because they're pushing a little bit more to a bluer spectrum. Let's dial this back a little bit. And we can actually make a unique look to ours, and we can mix LUTs. So in this case, we're gonna add another LUT. And for this one, because we don't want to set one LUT high and then the other LUT higher, and then whenever they add up, they're above 100, we try to keep that all the way at 100, because if you start pushing one LUT too much and you start pushing another LUT on top of that, it can create some banding and some artifacting depending on how those LUTs are processed. Now in this one, let's try to mix, if I want the greens to pop a little bit in skin tones, let's maybe mix Adagio 1 with this one. So Adagio 1's already gonna be pretty saturated, and let's go ahead and change the hierarchy of it so that the last part of it are the blues. So you can see before, we have it there, and then the last one, you get a little bit of a different look. You can play around with that. In this case, let's kind of go gentle on that, so maybe 0.3 for Adagio 1, and then maybe 0.6 for Lotus 2, and instantly we have before shot and after shot. Here we kind of created our own unique look by adding two different LUTs, and you can see that we kind of get a different look. Everything looks really well balanced, beautiful light, and the skin tones pop really well on that shot. Another clip that we have, we're gonna get into a log shot. Now this was shot by my good buddy Rob Jackson from Creative House Motion. This was shot on a GH5 in Vlog L. Now Vlog L is a little bit different than Vlog on, say, the Panasonic S1, S1H, the VariCam. I feel like the Vlog in those other cameras have a little bit more dynamic range, and you can push them a little bit more. In this case, we're gonna play around with the Vlog L in GH5, and I think this still balances pretty well. Now, the first thing that we're gonna do in this clip is we need to convert this log color space into a Rec 709 color space. And we actually have created a Vlog to Rec 709 LUT that we are gonna be making available to you for all the people that follow us. And if you view our website on Gamut, we're gonna make this LUT available for free. Now, it's gonna be out pretty soon, so be checking back for that. And we're gonna navigate to our custom LUT, and we're going to add that right there. And here we're gonna navigate, and I'm gonna put that in Gamut X. We have our free LUT there. We'll also have a Vlog to Gamut. Now this is not a Vlog L LUT, so there's a little bit of a difference in the different spectrum. So it's not gonna be the best conversion LUT for Vlog L. It will work best in Vlog, but in this case, we're gonna give it a try and see how it performs. So here we add it to the clip, and then we're gonna go ahead and add our color correction. So over here, we're gonna add the correction after we convert it into the color space we want. And we're gonna go ahead and raise the exposure level. Here you can see it's clipping right about 85, and the brightest part of this shot is his collar here. So we're gonna raise that up to 100. So let's go to our highlights and raise that up. Now that we're 100, but you can see we still have more room in the red and green channels. So let's just go ahead and raise that up higher until we get closer to there. And the way that I'm gonna balance this out is, instead of using curves to actually pull down one of the curve channels in blue to balance that out, I'm gonna go ahead and do that in the highlights here. So I'm gonna pull away from the blue channel, closer to the red and green, until we kind of get that leveled out. So right there, you can see now our highlights are all balanced, so we have a perfectly white color point for his collar. And then also our black levels, we're gonna kind of bring down a little bit more. And you can see they're kind of raised a little bit more in the reds, greens than they are in the blues as well. Now, because we pushed the highlights into the warmer tone, we're gonna be getting a lot more of a warmer skin tone, or we're gonna be getting warmer tones in more of the mid and highlight range. So to combat that, we're gonna pull back a little bit more of the mid tones, closer back to the blue range and the greens. So here I just kind of zigzag back and forth until I get to a look that I like. Also, it looks like the black levels are a little bit more in the blues, so I'm gonna push them away more into a warmer tone right there. And here we have the white levels are still balanced. Our skin tones still have a nice warm tone to them, but they're not overly warm. And you can see that before and after we have this look. And this is without any LUT applied, so it looks really great. Whenever we're working with log footage, we don't have to do too much. Whenever we're adding a LUT, we're not gonna use the same intensity levels usually. So in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and take the custom LUT and apply it to this clip. And here, let's try Free the Bird 2. And this one definitely needs to be dialed back down. And this one, maybe just keep it kind of nice and gentle, maybe around 0.3. And that's gonna keep nice of a warm kind of look right there, if that's the kind of vibe we're looking for with this couple. Now, we could also try, say, Dolce 4, which that one's gonna get more of a cleaner look with the white levels. Greens are gonna be a little bit vibrant, but not pop too much. So Dolce 4 kind of lifts up that skin tone range and adds a little bit more pinker hue to that, which looks really beautiful in this scenario. So this one, let's go back to this clip and see what that looks like. Now, if you're wanting to correct vlog footage in Premiere, you're gonna wanna go to your basic correction tab and your input LUT, and that's where you're going to browse to the vlog to Rec 709 conversion LUT. Once that's applied, then you can make any adjustments you want, and then we're gonna go ahead and add our creative LUT here, and that's how we're gonna do that in Adobe Premiere. And we're gonna go ahead and look at all the before and after. We're gonna disable everything. Man, that shot pops so much more. So I really like this look on this shot. We can go ahead and copy that and apply it to the next clip, since this was also shot on Vlog L. Now in this case though, we're gonna disable the color wheels, and you can see that we don't need to correct the highlight levels that we did in this clip because it's already balanced out here. The only thing we're gonna need to change is the exposure levels. So let's go ahead and delete that color. Actually, let's go ahead and enable it, and then we're gonna reset that parameter, and we're gonna lift up those highlights until they clip at right about 100, and then bring those black shadow levels down right about here. And then maybe let's warm this up. And then you have before and after. And you can, if you want that little bit of that faded look, you can easily just keep what it was instead of raising those highlights. So this one looks nice and gentle on the skin tone, but it has a little bit less of that contrast, has a little bit less of the saturation level. So it's whatever you want the mood and the viewer to feel when they're watching your film. And this one we can check to see what another LUT might look like. Let's try Stratus Blue. Let's try that. There you get a little bit more blue range in the greens, and then also a little bit more blues in his jacket. You can see before and after, kind of changing that look. Also, you could go with that moody vibe from Lotus 2. We can kind of crank that up. That's gonna have a nice look as well, kind of desaturating the greens, kind of creating more magenta in the shadows there. And then also maybe let's try Lotus 4. There we get more of that vibrance back in the greens, but we still get more of a bluer range in this dress here. So I'm gonna probably end on the blues here from Stratus. We'll probably put this around 0.5. So we have the before and after, and that's grading log footage and turning that on with a conversion LUT, changing from Vlog L, from that color space, that color gamut, into Rec 709 color space. And then we apply our correction, and then we apply our LUT. All right, so thanks so much for tuning in. I kind of wanted to walk through a few of these clips. We'll be doing this on a regular basis. Don't forget to check out Gamut.io. We will be releasing more helpful tutorials and reviews. Also, we have a free LUT for you to have if you want to sign up for our newsletter. Also, we're working on new conversion LUTs that we'll be making available for you as well. If you want to see more videos like this, or you just want to see what your footage looks like with Gamut LUTs applied, then go ahead and click on the link in the description of this video and submit your footage so that we can review it and possibly add it to the next video walkthrough of how we color grade your footage. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next video.